What's up, guys? Tom Davis here, America's Canine Educator. On this episode, I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to do a new little series that we're going to do pretty much for the rest of the week into next week. And all of the messages that I'm getting on Instagram, I get probably somewhere between 5 to sometimes 20 messages a day, questions on dog training and dog questions in general. Awesome, great. So I'm going to give you guys all the content I possibly can by answering these questions on YouTube for you guys to distribute and watch over and over and over. Answer comes from Shan B, 1986. And the question is, hi there. So I have asked you a small question in the past about recall, which is great, and we're working on it, and things are getting better. Good. Now, this is a long thing here, so I'm just going to skim it. I'm going to tell you guys what it says. So basically right now, what we're asking here is, I want my dog to be a little bit more protective because right now she's not protective. Even when my friends or family come over that she's never met or never seen, she still is very happy or timid to see them. So the last sentence, I didn't train her to be that way, and I hope that she's always playful, but I got her, she'll be 2 in June. So we have a younger dog, and so what the question is basically, fast forward, it is, how do I get my dog to be a little bit more protective when they're not? So it's a pretty good question. And so my simple answer is this. Dogs inheritedly are protective animals, which is why they are man's best friend or woman's best friend, and they typically will protect humans at any given moment for any given reason if they feel that they need to and or it's a threat. And that can work against us or it can work to our advantage sometimes. So I would say I wouldn't go out of your way to teach your dog to be protective of you. It's something that they naturally gain. They either have it or they don't. Of course, when you're talking about any protection dog, any protection sport training, there's a series of things that go into that. And the dog really inherently might not be protective. They're just trained a certain way to look like they are. So bottom line, I would say, is don't worry about teaching your dog to be aggressive. All of the protection dogs that you really see, for the most part, we're not teaching these dogs to be mean or aggressive, or I don't want to say protective because of course we are, but it's a sport, it's a game, it's fun. They look like they're intensely protecting the handler, and maybe sometimes they are. But for the most part, what you're seeing in these videos and you're seeing people online doing is it's a real big game for them. So I wouldn't go out of your way to try to teach your dog to be aggressive to people coming into your house, even though you want them to protect you. Because the bottom line is when it comes down to it, your dog probably will protect you if they really, really feel like you're in danger. Maybe not. But it's gonna create some sort of conflict between you and the dog if you're gonna teach them to be aggressive towards certain people. And you definitely don't want to get into something like that and actually the dog becoming aggressive or protective of you in your house, because then you're not gonna be able to really get it out. So I would say that there's a lot of people who I work with who have this issue and they pay lots of money to try to get it out of them. So my suggestion is I would just stick to where you're at and don't try to make your dog mean or aggressive. So the next question we're going to answer is written in from Ellie Warga. And Ellie Warga writes, hi Thomas, I was wondering what some sort of ways you would work with your dog who's weary of humans. He's been shy since I got him as a rescue puppy, and I tried to expose him to people and take him with me places when he was young. He's about a year now and still takes time to warm up to people, but once he does, he absolutely loves them. Just looking for some advice to get my dog to warm up to people faster. Thank you. You're welcome. So Ellie Warga, good question. So this goes for anybody dealing with a dog that's fearful. And again, this is the reason why I'm doing this. So first, understand this. Your dog could be afraid of random people or strangers for a really freaking good reason. So understand that. So you need to do your research on the dog. If you've had your dog since a puppy, then you know that this is something else. So secondly, when you're dealing with an insecure dog, you need to really, really determine, is the dog being stubborn or is the dog actually fearful of what you're asking them to do? So it's really, really your call to determine that. If your dog won't sit around strangers without food, then your dog's just being stubborn. That's an example of that. If your dog is crouching low, tail tucked, super scared, walking really low, not wanting to do anything, that's a really good sign of your dog actually being fearful or afraid. So when I'm answering these questions, guys, I have to answer them very, very widely because, I don't want you guys to take this to heart and go home and think that this is a diagnosis of exactly what's going on, because I'm unsure, because this is via Instagram, but I'm telling you, when you ask these questions, I'm going to give you the best answer I possibly can in a short time. So anytime I'm dealing with an insecure or fearful dog, I really, really make sure that I do things very, very slow and very, very comfortable and calm for them. So let's say your dog is afraid of Joe Schmo, okay? And you got Joe Schmo here. And you call Joe Schmo and you say, hey, Joe Schmo, my dog's afraid of you for whatever reason. And Joe Schmo says, yeah, I don't get it either. Let's fix this. And so what you're going to do is you're going to meet outside. You're going to call Joe Schmo and say, hey, meet me out in 10 minutes. You're going to go to Joe Schmo's house with your fearful dog. You're going to go outside. Now, I use a lot of positive reinforcement training when I'm working with fearful dogs because I'm going to give them some sort of incentive to work. Again, that's your call. Is the dog being stubborn and only works for filet mignon, or is your dog actually being fearful and you can lure them in with food to make them a bit more comfortable, because all dogs love food for the most part. So you're going to meet Joe Schmo, and some dogs get fearful in a barking sense, so they sound aggressive where they're not, but you guys know how I feel about that. And there's many other videos back there that you can find on that I've put out as well. So they may become reactive, but in this case, I think the question originally is they're just extremely fearful and they don't want anything to do with it. So what you'll do is you'll do some basic obedience around Joe Schmo. If your dog is kind of leaning towards that person or a bit reluctant but really curious, the best thing to do, as long as they're not fearful in a state of like maybe they're going to nip because they're really, really fearing for their lives for whatever reason, I just pass the leash off to them and have a conversation. So again, if you're going to go up to somebody and your dog is not going to bite or nip them or bark at them and be rude, all you have to do is go up, hand them the leash. The important part about this is making sure when you do that handoff, you don't make it a big deal. You have them release all of their pressure and you have a conversation very nonchalantly. This will then tell the dog that, oh, this person, or Joe Schmo in this case, really isn't a big deal and it's not a threat. So last but not least, to answer your question in a very vague, open, gray area way, if you can, if possible, have the people that are coming over to your house that your dog is fearful of or afraid of, and meet them outside first. Have a conversation outside and then go inside. That transition from outside big world, everything's okay, to inside small world, a bit fearful, will make a world of difference in the majority of dogs. Because you're outside, they get to know the person on neutral terms, neutral grounds, and then you slowly integrate your way inside, and that should transition beautifully. Now, the other thing to do, quick little reminder on all of this, keep your dog on a leash. Because again, for those of you who are dealing with a different dog that may be fearful aggressive, or I'm going to nip you because I'm afraid of you aggressive, keeping your dog on a leash will prevent that, and it'll prevent your dog from failing. So remember, for those of you who are dealing with dogs that are fearful aggressive during this time of transition, or if you're trying this method of doing something like this to get your dog not so afraid of people, use a leash so the dog doesn't fail. So all together, slow and steady wins the race. Don't overflow them with all this stuff and make them do things, because it's not going to work. It's much like that one person you really don't like, and then you got your buddy that squishes you right next to them and says, now like each other. You're almost going to resent that person even more because it's forced. But if you put them in a big open room or a big open bar, have them around each other, and they slowly start to realize that, hey, maybe that person's not so bad, things are going to naturally and organically come together a lot better than they would if you force them. So fearful dogs, a little bit different. They're going to bark and be jerks. Correct that behavior, have the person ignore them, do the best you can to remain calm, and that should set you guys up for success. Okay, so this next question is going to come from Mepaquet14. And this question came in just now, and it basically asks, it's all about anxiety. The anxiety is starting. It's happened before. This dog was adopted at the age of 2, and the anxiety comes and goes. So we're looking for a little bit of advice on how to fix anxiety or how to curb the behavior. So good question. I think we're going to keep it to 3 because 3 is a good number. It's an odd number, but I'm odd, so that works. So number 3, okay. And when you're dealing with dogs that are anxious, chances are they have a reason to be anxious for the most part. So big things are entry and exiting. If you come home and you make a big ordeal, or if you leave and you make a big deal, the dog is going to become anxious when you leave, because basically what you're doing is, there's a thing in dog training called marker training. Marker training means, hey, sit. Ooh, sit. Food. Good. So what happens is we say a verbal command and then something happens after that. And there's also a crazy doctor scientist called Pavlov, and Pavlov created this same conditioning thing. Some verbalization or some sound goes off and then something happens after that. So what I'm saying is if you condition the dog, oh, I love you so much, I'm going to miss you so much, it's going to be so bad, and then you leave, and then, so every day, Monday through Friday or whenever you work, you do that, your dog's going to know that you're going to be gone for 6 to 7 hours. Which will then start creating a ton of anxiety, because you're basically conditioning the dog that once you go into that state of mind, or you go into that high-pitched voice, or you lay next to your dog and kiss them goodbye, they know you're going to be gone for an extended period of time, which will then throw the dog into an anxious behavior. So what I suggest to people is that's normally where a lot of anxiety comes from that I've seen, is the exit and entry. And a lot of this has to do with in the house. Whining, barking out the window, jumping at the fence, jumping on the windows, just a ton of barking, just bad stuff. So the dog is constantly anxious all day until you come home. Then what happens when you come home is, after you made the Academy Award of, okay, I'm leaving, the dog goes, oh crap, you're going to be gone for 4 hours because that's your work schedule. Then when you come home, you do it all over again. And then the dog just gets so excited. And so dogs and animals, and I've said this 100 times before, mirror whatever we do. So if we leave and we're sad and we're coaxing the dog to be okay while we're gone, the dog's going to automatically go into that state of mind and say, oh my God, something's wrong. Or here we go again, you're going to be gone for 6 hours and I'm going to pee on the carpet and all this stuff and whatever. And then we come home and we do the exact same thing when we come home. So we come home, we talk high-pitched, I'm home, and then the dog freaks out, because that's exactly what you're doing. So anybody that's working with any low anxiety levels, or anxiety when you leave, or anxiety when you come home, it's probably because you're giving them a freaking good reason to do it. The other thing I want to cover on anxiety is, it's a ton of exercise-related behavior, so that I've seen. And it depends. Like, some dogs are anxious because they're a Malinois or a Shepherd that has a crazy amount of things going on, and they have to do stuff. So that's the anxiety that's created off the breed. And if you're not supplying that dog with the right information and you have an anxious dog, it's probably because the dog's not right for you. Anxious dogs is, you have to understand the breed. So if you're writing me and saying, hey, my Belgian Malinois is anxious all the time, I'm going to say, yep, that's what you got. So breed kind of depends on anxiety levels as well, because my St. Bernard can sleep home for 7 hours and not blink. And then one of my Shepherds can literally not go 13 seconds without something to do. So make sure that you know your breeds and you're supporting them properly, and making sure that you're giving them a good mental, healthy, physical, healthy lifestyle in order to sustain their sanity, really. So exercise. That can play a big role in working with anxious situations. Now, I do a lot of translation between human psychology and dog psychology, and what they do for humans that are have a lot of anxiety or just mild anxiety, the best way to do it is give them something to do. Make them a list. Starting from right when you wake up all the way until it's time to go to bed, we have a schedule for that person. And that person is no longer anxious because they don't have any time to think about what could go wrong or what to do. Schedule. If you're really, really worried about the anxiety, give your dog a schedule and give them something to do. Now, if you're at home going, well, I don't have a schedule for my dog because it's a lab, but when I leave, the lab cries a lot, don't freak out when you leave. Give them something to do. Start crate training them. Give them a Kong. Make sure you give them exercise before you go to work. Make sure you give them exercise before you go to 3-hour church sermon or whatever you do. Every single dog on this planet needs some sort of exercise, but you need to understand that dogs need not only physical exercise, but mental exercise. I can run a dog on a treadmill for 14 miles and they can get off, not be able to walk, but they're still going to whine because mentally they're still up here. So make sure that you're exercising your dog if you're having any issues with anxiety, because I would say that that's 80% of the issue, is if your dog's anxious, it's because they're not getting enough exercise. So that's it for tonight. All of these messages came on from my Instagram direct messages, so we did 3 tonight. Next time we'll probably do 3, and then maybe the next time we'll do 137, I'm not sure. But keep those messages coming in on my Instagram page, and then what I'm going to do, if I'm going to answer them, I'll message you back and let you know, hey, we picked your question. My staff and myself go through and pick them, and what works and what doesn't. Some of these questions are, hey, my Chihuahua's small, what do I do? I don't reply to those questions. But for all of the other questions that are really, really great, we're going to continue to answer them. Thank you guys so much for your support, and we'll see you next time. Peace.